All right, welcome back to another episode of In the Paint. I am joined, as I am every time we record, with my buddy, my hooping pal, my co-host, Joe. Welcome back, man. What's going on?
Hey, I got married on Monday.
Dude, I was going to be like, hey, am I going to bring that up or are you?
Yeah.
So first off, congrats, man.
Thanks. So, it's in the middle of a pandemic, so, just a little ceremony at the courthouse and everything. We'll throw a party, private party here when this is all over. So
I was gonna say you did the responsible COVID
that's right.
ceremony, yeah. And then you'll throw a banger when the time comes for sure. Yeah.
So ladies, I am so sorry. I'm officially taken right now. I know there's so many of you that listen to this podcast and love Matt and I, but we're both married, so
yeah. Well, find another podcast to hit on because
exactly.
We're both locked down. No, well, congrats, man. But we're going to get to more important things, which is basketball.
Of course.
So ball is life, not marriage. Anyway, so last week we talked about, was a more player centered kind of a podcast. We had talked about some injuries. We talked about some potentially life-saving news, which we now have more information on. We found out about Karl Anthony Towns with COVID. We have people back from injury. And then we talked about a cool story with Delonte West and Mark Cuban and how Delonte West is back on his feet and kind of just really thriving now in this new role that he has at that rehab center. And so today we're going to kind of talk about a couple more player things, some league information. And then we're really just going to dive into a couple team storylines and then talk about who we think a quarter of the way through the NBA season is leading in certain award categories. And if we have any sort of updated Western Conference Finals or Eastern Conference Finals picks, we'll talk about that. But we don't know a whole lot, but we are a quarter of the way through. So we have a decent sample size of what's been going on, in this league so far. But let's start. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the tragic death of Kobe and his daughter, and then several other people that were on a helicopter. Just wanted to take the time to just quickly kind of remember a couple Kobe stories. I know it's funny that it's not funny, but it's crazy that it's already a year, because I feel like we were sitting talking about this at one point, like, it seems like the other day, but now it's been a year. So just first off, RIP Kobe and Gigi, but also talk about some, I don't know, just things that you remember with Kobe for sure.
The first thing that comes to mind is the Mamba mentality. And I'll never forget, actually, you were the one who told me that it happened. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I remember.
Yeah, I remember texting you, but I didn't know that I was the first one to bring it to you.
Yeah, I was at home. I had my my girlfriend, now my wife at the time's family over, and all of a sudden I get a text from my friend Matt that just said, "Holy shit, Kobe just died." And I'm sorry, Matt, I didn't believe you. I didn't at first. I had to verify. I had to go on the internet just to make sure that this wasn't just a maybe this happened kind of thing, but it actually did. So, but stuff I'll always remember about Kobe is I'm gonna remember him willing a lot of those Lakers teams, especially in the mid 2000s, that were just awful, to the playoffs, and his 81-point game, obviously. And just how hard he worked, and he wasn't much of a trash talker. You realize that? He had that swagger to him, that confidence and everything like that. But one thing that if you go back and look at that 81-point game, it was all business. It wasn't showboating, it wasn't anything like that. So that's what I got, man.
Yeah, I think the thing I'll always remember is the image, the lasting image I always have in my head is when he tore his Achilles and he limps out and still hits his free throws. Nuts. I think for me, and I think Klay Thompson did something similar. He tore his ACL at one point, I think in the playoffs, and then he goes out and like he actually was already in the locker room and came back out and like hit his free throws. And so I just remember like that image is just kind of basically encompassing of just who he was, of a guy who, man, like when the lights were on and when the game was going, he gave everything he had every single time he played. Even if that was a 2 for 20 night, or it was a 3 for, 17 night, you could guarantee that he was going to try to get to the line if that was the case. He could guarantee that he was going to play his butt off on the defensive end if that was the case. I just think that like now the NBA is like okay with being a bad defender. Like there's players that are like, oh, well, I scored this much on the offensive end, so I'm okay with being a bad defender.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think Kobe would stand for that now. And I know he played on some really bad defensive teams later, with the Lakers, just bad teams in general. But just like for me, he was always a guy that like, man, when he was doing rough on the offensive end, he would always try to make a key defensive stop or maybe take a charge or get a block or something that just frustrated the other team on the defensive end. And you don't see a whole lot of that anymore. It's like you're a specialist on one and you're not great on the other. And I just don't know if Kobe would have like been okay with that for his game. But yeah, like the lasting image of him just like taking free throws on a torn Achilles will just always stick with me, as for the rest of that I live. And just anytime I see him come up, his name come up, that'll be something I think about.
How about the fact that he just would never back down from, anybody? He comes in as a hotshot rookie 18-year-old and basically, says, I'm not going to be punked by anybody. Almost gets in a fight with Shaq, like during game or during practices, in the summer. And, he just, he wanted to win. And we kind of saw him grow up publicly, right? From this hotshot brazen kid who, really still worked hard even as an 18-year-old to get where he was going, to kind of matured into this father figure and this elder statesman for other NBA players. And I guarantee you there isn't an NBA player, like especially American born today, that didn't have some kind of influence on from Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think we talked about this before when we chatted, but like the biggest bummer of it all, obviously him passing, but the biggest bummer is he had made such a smooth transition post basketball and he was doing so many great things. And it's just a bummer that we're never going to get to see all those through. Like we're not going to get to see Kobe old and gray, like sitting courtside like Bill Russell does or whatever. We're not going to get to see that. And that's just a bummer, because he had done so flawlessly transitioning from the league to like post basketball and his like business ventures and his books and his movies and screenplays and things like that. We're just not going to get to see those anymore. And that's just a bummer because not many people can transition well after a sport. Retirement is hard for a lot of athletes. And It seemed like Kobe, like day one, was just like, I'm good. Like I'm into other things, and was so damn good at them. So it was crazy.
Yeah. He got everything he wanted out of the game. Knew that he couldn't play necessarily at the level that he wanted anymore, consistently. And he was ready to move on with no regrets. And that is going to be a huge thing that, he's not sitting there, during Laker games. And we're not going to get to see him, grow and see what it is next. So. Yeah,
I mean, that's all. It's a bummer. Above everything else. And then in other really just tragic, like unfortunate news, yesterday, I feel like it was yesterday, I'm reading that we lost a really well-known and like beloved by almost everybody, it seemed like, reporter for NBA.com and NBA TV, even hosted a podcast. Steakhouse Smith passes away, and man, it's just this freaking virus. And it's just, it like anytime I read that that's the cause of death, I just get angry because this thing is just, it's a bitch, man. And so, yeah, he passed away, 48 years old.
48, man. Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot else to say. I didn't know a ton about him. I know he hosted a podcast and he was on NBA TV sometimes, and he was a writer for NBA.com. But it seemed like everybody all over Twitter that had worked with him or had an interaction with him said he was nothing but a great guy. So just to see a guy like that go down with with a virus that is just ravaging the country and the world just sucks. And we've talked about it with Karl Anthony Towns too. Like it's hitting people in so many different ways, and just sucks that it took another person that was well loved and well known in the NBA community.
Yeah, I mean, he works with the NBA team and NBA.com since 2009. Before that, I think he was in Indiana as a lead reporter there, and just like you said, known and loved by everybody. So,
looks like he was Grand Rapids born too. That's kind of near you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Grand Rapids for about 9 years. Yeah, so
yeah. Anyway, all that to say, RIP and thoughts and prayers to the family. But now let's move on to some lighter information here and some lighter topics. Jaylen Brown is having himself a year.
Yeah, he's kind of taken that next step, hasn't he? I mean, Tatum's kind of been a little in and out of the lineup, it seems like, this year. And, he's really filled that role. And the Celtics are not deep. Like, we know this. Like, they got all these assets in the trade, and everybody talks about what a great job Danny Ainge has done. And, you've hammered on it, quite a bit. But, like, they are not deep. But the fact that, Brad Stevens with really 4, 5, maybe 6 really rotational NBA players are still out there, playing playoff basketball is crazy. And Jaylen Brown has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. 26 PER, 63% true shooting percentage. His win shares are a little lower than normal. But his offensive win shares are his second highest he's ever had. I mean, they're just every stat I look at. I mean, his per 36, his points per game, he's averaging 30 per 36, and per 100 possessions, he's averaging 40 points a game. His offensive rating is 119. Like he has lacked a little bit defensively, but I think it's because he's having to kind of exert so much offensively for the team. But man, just every stat I look at, I'm just blown away. 53% from the field, averaging 28 a game, just like raw numbers. I mean, my goodness, just taking that jump I'll be the first to say, like, he was always thrown in these trade packages, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't believe it. Like, I don't understand the hype. And I think that might've been justified up until about last year, but he's putting everything I've said to shame. And man, he's averaging almost 33 minutes a game and just really just putting the league on notice. He's really taken a big step with Tatum being out for COVID reasons and contact tracing. So shout out to Jaylen Brown for almost single-handedly rolling with this Celtics team.
I mean, all of a sudden, he goes from 2 years ago where he's getting like 10 shots a game, only scoring 13 points. People forget about that. I mean, that was in 2018, 2019 when he was 22 years old. Usually people make that jump in about their third year, right? If you're going to be a star, it's in your third or fourth year. He didn't do that. He was at 13 points a game. He wasn't playing very well. And then, 2 years later, I mean, his numbers are just off the charts. And I think he has to score more. And I think that's part of it right now too, right? Like he has to, I mean, he's getting 20 shots a game.
Yeah, definitely the necessity for him to score right now with what they're lacking, just like you said, in depth, but also just like one of their superstars has been out for a while. Yes, that will always bring about a desire, a fire to score more. But just because you want to do it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it. And for him, he averages, as you mentioned, a career 13.9 points a game. He's almost doubled that in 16 games this year. So, I mean, like that, not only is that a desire to score more, but he actually is just scoring more and doing it damn near efficiently too. So he's just overwhelmingly and overall just outperforming what he's done his entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. And we said it before in a Brad Stevens offense that some of the numbers are a little bit deflated because of the way that they share the ball and the offense that they run, right? I remember saying last year that Tatum's numbers, if he was in a different system than what Brad Stevens does, his numbers probably would be better. And I think you're starting to see, without that depth and them having to take over, that, wow, these guys can really play.
Yeah. And no, we talked about that, ad nauseum sometimes on this podcast, where it's like kind of open up the playbook a little bit, like let these guys be a little more free. I wonder what Tatum and now Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown, what these guys would do in kind of like I don't know, not a Houston type offense, but like just a more open, where you just run less organized stuff, less rigid plays, and you kind of just run freely. I really do wonder, what that would look like. And we're starting to see it, like you just mentioned. So, and what I haven't pulled up their record in a minute, but I feel like they're 10-6. So it's not like they're terrible.
They're contenders.
They're like, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we've said though, like, man, they could take a bigger step if they had that like second or third guy really perform phenomenally in the playoffs. And maybe this is like, we're getting to that point where if Jaylen Brown can do this consistently with Kemba and Jason, like maybe this is an actual legitimate contender. I know depth is always going to be an issue, but those three have to, like right now, if those three don't perform to the highest level, they're not going anywhere. So sure. The fact that Jaylen Brown is taking this massive step is a sign that they may have a chance, to compete in the playoffs.
No, I absolutely agree. And the more shots he takes and the less Marcus Smart takes, the better.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want Marcus Smart taking 15 shots a game and 7 of those threes. We just don't. I'm sorry.
And I like Marcus Smart. Like,
of course.
He's a great defensive player. He has a place on a team. He just needs to kind of sometimes nose roll a little bit better. So,
no doubt. Joe, did you see? Yeah, go on ahead.
I was just gonna say,
we both couldn't wait to talk about this.
I know, like I just don't understand. Okay, so Shaq just basically just comes out and says about Donovan Mitchell that he's not a superstar.
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know if so. This might be my segment that I rant the most on today, because
okay.
I'm tired of, maybe I'm not even tired of it. I don't understand why analysts, Barkley does it too. Charles Barkley does it a decent amount as well. Just because you played in the league at one time does not give you the right to just trash on current players because you're an analyst. Your job is different now. You're an analyst. You are not a player coach, player analyst. You are an analyst, solely that. I understand you're in this fraternity forever and you play in the NBA, fine, whatever. Do you think that Donovan Mitchell gives a rip what you did back in 2000? He was like, I'm G14 classified, Google me. Donovan Mitchell doesn't give a shit what you did in 2000. He doesn't. I'm sorry, whatever you did in 2000 doesn't give you the right to go on national television and literally say the quote, I said tonight that you're one of my favorite players, but you don't have what it takes to get to the next level. I said it on purpose, and I wanted you to hear it. What do you have to say about that? How did he think that was going to go?
How awkward is that? I just don't understand. Like, what is the purpose of something like this? And you're right. These older players, for some reason, it's just like the back in my day, like attitude that's just absolutely ridiculous, because today's players are as talented as ever. So Shaq says that on national television after he had just won a game, by the way. And he's on the microphone and he says that quote, and then Donovan Mitchell just goes, all right. And then a long pause goes by and he goes, that's it. That's it, Shaq. I've been hearing that since my rookie year. I'm just going to keep getting better and do what I do. Like, what did Shaq expect Donovan Mitchell's answer to be? Like, thanks, man. You're right. I'm not very good. I'm going to keep working though. Like, no, he's not going to do that. Like, he's going to be a little pissed off at that statement. And he's going to kind of feel a certain type of way about it. So Donovan Mitchell handled it probably as professionally as he could. Like, he says, all right. And then he brings like the political, I've heard this all my life, or, since my rookie year, I'm gonna just keep grinding. And good for him. But like, man, he could have easily been like, man, shut the hell up. Like, these old heads talking and like,
I don't know. I'm so tired of analysts that used to play. Like, I think, or like coach or whatever. What was it? Rex Ryan used to talk shit about Baker Mayfield on NFL Countdown all the time. And it's like, stop thinking that because you were a coach that you just have this right to then trash current players. I don't think any analyst, whether they played or not, should do it. But like normal analysts that are like really good at their job don't do that. They just analyze. They don't trash on a guy. They just like, hey, you didn't play well. They don't say, I don't think you have what it takes to get to the next level. Like, no, I don't. I feel like you're cutting deep at that point.
Yeah, I just don't know what the motivation is to the Shaq. Like, what does he gain for doing that? I mean, and why Donovan Mitchell? Like, it's not like he has this like history with him. You know what I mean? I mean, it makes zero sense to me. And just like, I don't get it. So your time is over, big man. Like, I loved you, Shaq, most dominant ever. But like, saying Donovan Mitchell is good doesn't take away from how good you were. So I don't understand why you're trying to do this. So
yeah, you'd almost want to think like, oh, or like, is it somebody that's just threatened? Like, are they threatened by? But it's like Shaq's legacy is never threatened. So
and why would it be threatened by Donovan freaking Mitchell? Like, it's not like it's another Laker center that's going out, and it's not like you said about Anthony Davis where you'd be like, oh, okay, like maybe you could see why because you were the past and then you have the new guy, but Donovan Mitchell.
And then like LeBron clapped back at Shaq, and then Kevin Durant went back at him too. And basically, the common sentiment from all these players currently is like these old players and these old heads just keep talking, and like we didn't say anything bad about Shaq. We all know Shaq is phenomenal. What is LeBron gonna do? Like Shaq sucked? Like no one's gonna say that. I just don't understand why these old players feel like they have to like puff themselves up or like defend themselves or like code themselves with this armor of like, why are they so defensive? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And so that whole interaction just was like awkward. I feel like it's the best way to describe it. It was just awkward.
It was just absolutely weird. And like you said, like these guys that are in the NBA now, especially like the Donovan Mitchells and LeBron James and Kevin Durant, like they know the history of the NBA. They know these players. They know how good they were. They have a respect towards them. Why is that? It's not like they're out there dissing them. You know what I mean? So like,
and the older player, go ahead.
Why are they coming back and doing it almost in like reverse? It just doesn't make sense to me.
And by the way, the older players are the ones that are still saying that like, oh, us older players could score 50 a game in this league's NBA. First off, no, you couldn't.
No.
And we just talked about it. There's only been like 130 50-point games and only like 70 60-point games. So you just think that you're going to walk in here and waltz in and score 50 points? Like that's just not going to happen. It's so rare. And no chance. Like that's why these younger players are already starting to get angry because the older players won't shut up. Like your time is done. Move on. Make your money doing a bunch of other stuff. Like Shaq, you're making a ton of money what you're doing what you're doing. Why are you worried about Donovan Mitchell not being able to reach the next level, which by the way, he already kind of has. So like we can move past that. I don't know. That just like the whole interaction pissed me off. I watched it live and I was like, uh-oh, this is weird. But all that to say, like Shaq, you're great at what you do. Donovan Mitchell, you're great at what you do. Like, why can't we all just like respect each other for what we do? I don't understand.
I don't either. And then Arenas, he can score, 40 points a game. Did you hear him come out and say that? That was earlier this summer. So
I don't know.
Crazy stuff.
I respect confidence. There's a difference between confidence and just like being an ass. And you can say that you'll score 40, but until you walk in the league and do it now, I won't believe it. And guess what? You're not walking in the league now and scoring 40 because these dudes are too damn good. They're too damn good.
Yeah. And it's easy to say that. Like, it's easy to talk is cheap, right? Like, it's easy to say, oh, if I was playing in today's, time period.
Of course. Yeah. It's all hypothetical and all relative and whatever.
Right.
So there's a guy that we were talking about last week and we were like, hey, we don't think he has value. We don't think this is going to work out. This crazy story happens with Kevin Porter Jr. He gets his locker moved and he has a hissy fit and then he throws some food on the owner or the GM. And then literally, was it that night or the next night? I think overnight news dump, dude gets traded.
Yeah. For like a heavily protected pick, right? Second round, I think it was.
Yeah, I want to say it was like a decent pick for a guy that pretty much had no value at the time. But Kevin Porter Jr. finds himself going to the Rockets, I guess. So, I mean, good for him, maybe. I don't really know if that's great, but
hey, tell you what, the Rockets have been playing pretty well.
they actually have. You're right.
They're not a great team, by any stretch of the imagination, but they're playing pretty well. So,
but I just thought that was so funny that we literally were like, oh yeah, I don't think he has value. Like he's probably stuck there. They'll have to release him. And then the next night they trade him to Houston. So that was all funny. But last bit of NBA information. The last I heard from Mark Stein is that there's a really, really good possibility, and it's almost all but done, that the NBA is planning on having an All-Star weekend or maybe just an All-Star day in Atlanta coming up.
Yeah, I mean, things are kind of looking up for when it comes to COVID. So it would be kind of cool to have something at least on the books, right? I mean, I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but our players have just been through the ringer. Are they going to want to do this thing? That's my thing. Like, I know it's going to be in March, in Indianapolis, right? Is that where they're at? This
Atlanta.
Okay, Atlanta. Sorry. So originally it's supposed to be in Indianapolis, but Atlanta now. So, I mean, it's kind of a good sign, I guess. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? I guess.
I'm just a little confused, I guess, because like 1 week we're having to postpone like 6, 7, 8 games, like crazy talk. And then the next we're like, oh, but by the way, we are going to have an all-star game where a bunch of people are going to come to one place and play a game that doesn't really mean anything other than money. And we're going to just say COVID doesn't necessarily exist for this one day. So let's do that.
Why? I just don't understand.
That's the big question, right?
Right. Why are we doing this? I guess, I mean, I know it's nice and it's, kind of a cool break and everything like that, but like, and the players union seems like they're actually on board with it. So, or at least some version of it. So, and it would be set around, March 5th, I think 7th, March 7th is the day that they're looking at. But I mean, they've already postponed 22 regular season games. Why are we talking about this? Honestly.
Yeah, like I just said, I'm a little confused. I don't think it's needed. I think like it'd probably just be better off if they just like took a break and just like relaxed after this kind of like weird first half. But instead we're gonna bring everybody into one place in Atlanta and get Magic City some business, and then that's about it. Like I don't know.
I'm a little confused by your tactics right now, NBA.
You've been so good. But I mean, like, I guess if
you got going on there.
I guess if these players are down, then like that's fine. But I don't know how down these players are going to be like when it actually gets closer to that time. So we'll see. There'll be more news to come that may just be squashed at some point. But we'll see. All right, Joe, let's jump in. We have a couple teams we want to talk about that have just kind of like really either confused us or like some fun stuff to talk about. But first off, what in the hell is wrong with the Pelicans?
Let me ask you a question here.
Gotcha.
How good of a coach is Stan Van Gundy? First of all. And second of all, has the modern NBA and the changes that have developed over the last 15 years, has he not adapted well enough? Was he a good coach? And then I don't know the answers to those things. I really don't. You look at his track record. He was with the Heat. He gave up his position because Pat Riley said, "No, I'm going to coach now." He goes to Orlando. He takes them to an NBA Finals. He does do that under Dwight Howard and their defense when they had Dwight Howard, they had Rashard Lewis, they had Jameer Nelson. They had some pieces, but it's not like they were, world beaters at the time. And and then he goes to Detroit doesn't really do a whole lot there, but also didn't have a whole lot of pieces to work with. So I'm confused because this team is not short on talent. Let's make that very clear, right? Like Brandon Ingram is turning into an excellent player. Zion Williamson is unstoppable force right around the basket. Lonzo Ball can play like they have good pieces. Josh Hart. I mean, so it's confusing.
Are they just like, I know they have talent, but are they just like built weird? Like
Yeah, I think so.
I've kind of like looked at their roster and just how they're kind of built, and I just don't think that they're built like super well rounded. I don't. I'm looking at their ratings now. They're 19th in offense, and I think they're also 19th in defense. No, they're 24th in defense. So I know we do this every time we record, it seems like, but like they're below average defensively and they're a little below average offensively. So like they just don't do anything well, it looks like. I mean, as a team. Obviously Zion has moments where like he's unbelievable, and Brandon Ingram has moments and games and all these times where they're unbelievable. But I don't know. I just don't feel like they're built to be great.
No, I mean they don't have a rim protector. They don't have shooting, right? I mean, consistent shooting. Besides, name slipping me.
JJ Redick.
Yes, that guy. So JJ Redick, and it's not like Zion is someone that they run a lot of plays for or run their offense through. He just kind of almost gets 20 points by accident. So, and he's got a long way to go defensively, and when it comes to defensive rebounding, like he's an extremely good offensive rebounder, but defensive rebounding he does struggle, and his rates show that. So, I don't know. I think you're right. I think it's a weird roster. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games.
Oh
2-8.
Gosh, and they're 5-10, right, or something like that.
Yeah, 5-10, 2-8 in their last 10 games. And how much time do you give Van Gundy with this roster? I don't know. And do you put some blame on him?
Oh, I think there's no question. They brought him in and they were like, oh, well, he's a great defensive mind. So like we can really work on the defensive schemes and all this stuff. The problem the problem is twofold. One, you got to have the players to run a scheme. And two, you got to be up to date with the new stuff to run the scheme. And I think both those combined, not having the great players for the scheme, and also the scheme may not be relevant to 2020 basketball, 2021 basketball. So like you mentioned, has it passed him by a little bit? I think there's no question. Like he tried in Detroit, and I thought the Detroit thing was just he was in over his head with all his responsibilities. But it might be that he was just in over his head because he wasn't ready to be a head coach regardless. I know a couple people that I texted, like they didn't like the hire. I thought it was going to be decent. I didn't think it was like a home run hire, but I thought it was a pretty good hire. I had two people that were like, no, don't like the hire at all. Don't think it fits. And maybe we're starting to find out like maybe it didn't, and maybe it just doesn't work. The roster construction is not great, but the fit of the coach may also not be great either.
I was confused by it. I mean, last year, Alvin Gentry during the regular season did a very good job. I felt like over the summer, no, like they totally tanked in the bubble and they were terrible. So I understand almost, why they let him go. But I will say this: I don't think this team is 5-10 and 2-8 in their last 10 games if Gentry is the coach, right? Because I think they're outscoring people. They're playing at a much higher pace. They're getting, and I think that's what you have to do with that team. You can't slow this team down. Like you have to go, right? With their athletes and everything.
For sure. One thing to remember, I mean, there's no more Drew Holiday, which like matters.
That's huge. Huge.
Like wildly renowned around the league as the most underrated player, maybe, at that time. So like you're losing that guy matters. But yeah, I think like they're just playing a way that one doesn't suit the roster construction. and 2, the roster construction is not great. You couple those things together, it's a bad recipe. So all that to say, I think if Gentry is the coach, they're definitely better than 5-10, and they're definitely not 2-8 in their last 10. I can tell you that.
Right. Did you see LeBron the other night?
I mean, I watched the entire game. It was awesome. So awesome.
Dude, I know we like gush, and everybody who watches the show probably just thinks like we're like LeBron homers or whatever. I don't care, man. Like, you just have to appreciate it right now, right? Like, I just appreciate good basketball and greatness. And his 46 the other day on Monday night, what do you have? Over 20 in the fourth quarter. Just completely took it over. So,
yeah, I think he had 17 in the first, and then he had 21 or 22 in the fourth. In the fourth, he shot 90% from the field. Like, I understand a lot, it's dunks and it's layups and whatever. No.
Oh no, he had that fadeaway from the corner where
he had the fadeaway from the corner.
So stupid.
He had the 2 step back threes, and I think at one point, this might not have been the fourth, but at one point in the game, he hit a 3 from damn near the logo. So he was 19 of 26 from the field, 7 of 11 from 3, with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. It's absurd, dude. Like, I'm not normally like amazed at LeBron because I'm like, oh, this is LeBron. That game was amazing because he's in his 18th year and he's doing things that he did in his 8th year that are just bonkers.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, and you have to appreciate it because you don't know when it's going to end. And and every day you go in and you think, well, this could be it, but he just keeps showing up and doing stuff. And don't taunt him.
So here's what's really funny. I have to pull up my Twitter because, Joe, I know you follow me, but if nobody else on this podcast follows me, you can. It's at Matt Tweed, at Matts_Tweed 22 if you want to follow me. I do mostly tweet about basketball. But the other night I was tweeting about the game, and I tweeted at, what time was this? 10:05 p.m. This is right when it happened. I said, someone just said something to LeBron courtside at the end of the third, and now every time he makes a bucket, he looks at him. You think people would learn, if you come at the king, you best not miss. So I said that.
Hey-o.
And then people proceeded to comment on the tweet because they were like, I thought I was the only one that saw that. Like, I saw that too. Why would people do that? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it comes out that was actually a Cavs employee that was sitting courtside. So not only did you screw up by getting in his, getting under his skin, you work for the opposing team. And if you worked there when he was there, you should know better than to piss off the king, because that doesn't work.
It's LeBron James, dude. I mean, what are you doing? Like, and LeBron even said afterwards, he said someone got a little too happy about me missing that, shot at the end of the third quarter. And that, I mean.
And what's funny is the video, like there's a video from him kind of like up above. And so you can see the guy get up and clap in his face and be really happy that he missed that shot at the end of the third. And LeBron does the classic. It's like everybody now, if you do it, knows exactly what's happening. He looks at the guy right in his face and he kind of does a smirk and he just goes, all right. And that's the renowned bet. That's just bet. And you then spurred on a 20+ point fourth quarter when your team was on a nice run. And you lost, I know LeBron won the game, but that fan lost that game that employee lost the game for the Cavs. Because
playing great basketball too.
They were playing really well. They've been playing well, and they played really well that night. It just so happened that they got a guy pissed off and he scores 46 or 48, whatever he had. 46.
Not just a guy. LeBron James.
The guy. Yeah, not just he didn't piss off Dennis Schroeder. He pissed off LeBron James.
Why?
I always just go back and I'm like, dude, what were you what are you thinking? What did you, again, I just asked the question, what did you think was going to happen? What do you have to gain from this? Nothing.
Don't you want to know who that dude is now?
I want somebody to be like, oh yeah, I want his kid to be like, oh crap, that's my dad. Some kid on Twitter just be like, that's my dad. But anyway, what we've learned again and time again is that LeBron James doesn't age, and that you do not piss off the best player in the world because he's got something for you every single time.
What was amazing about that was just the array of shots and just his knowledge. And if you break down some of his plays, like the way he sees the court and manipulates it to his will, it's nuts, dude. It's insane.
I heard a quote today. Anthony Davis was on a podcast with Complex, I think. And there was one game against the Mavericks this year where LeBron, I think it was a 2-for-1 situation. So there's a little context, but he was dribbling down and he took a one-legged left leg three and he bricks it. Like, it's completely terrible. It doesn't even come close, but I think it was like, oh, I'm going to try to get a 2-for-1 here. And it didn't. I mean, it worked out, but it didn't really. So Anthony Davis after the game goes, so we just not going to talk about your one-legged three, LeBron? Like, we just not going to talk about that, how bad that was? And he looks him dead in the eyes and just goes, I don't give a fuck. I do what I want. And that right there is the same mentality that he took against the Raptors in 2017 when he was doing all the crazy shit in that sweep game and that closeout game. And the same shit that he did the other night against the Cavs. It was, I don't give a fuck. I'm the king. I will shoot however I want. And most of the time it goes in because I'm the GOAT. Like, that's what his mentality is. And I just love that Anthony Davis verbalized that for us because we see it, but he was like, I don't give a fuck. I do what I want.
It's great.
But on that note, we're going to take a break and then we'll come back and talk about some quarter way through awards that we are going to give out. All right, welcome back. Like I said, before the break, we're going to jump into our quarter way through the season awards. Some may sound the same as our preseason awards. Some may be different just based on the few games that we've watched here. Joe, let's start it off. So a quarter of the way through the season, who is your MVP?
I think it's Joel Embiid, man. So let me throw out some numbers for you real quick. Okay. So PER, he's leading the league right now. 31.21. He's first in there. Fifth in points, seventh in rebounds. We had talked last year about what has he gotten better at since he's entered the league. This year, he's averaging almost 28 points a game, up from 23 points. He's averaging about the same in assists, the same rebounds. His field goal percentage, though, went from 47.7 on twos to 55, and is shooting 40% from three. With Doc Rivers at the helm, defensively, the Sixers are just amazing, him and Simmons. So he's clearly taken a step. He's averaging almost 5 more points a game on the same amount of shots. And still they're anchored defensively. So I think it's Embiid, man. I mean, I really do. I mean, there's other guys who have had great seasons so far. You're going to talk about one of them here, and but through his 14 games, I think it's him. So I'd like to see him play a little bit more. He's still only at 31 minutes a game, which is pretty low for someone of his age, and his ability. But I think it's him so far.
Yeah. I'm going to give somebody different, but we're splitting hairs at this point. I feel like, because
it's a 2-man race right now, right?
I think it's 3. I think you can throw in a third. I think you can throw in Doncic too. I think he's definitely up there. The way he's been playing as of late, he's been really unstoppable.
I would agree if they were better.
Yeah, that's fair.
They're 500
That's fair.
team, so.
No, that's definitely fair. I think Kevin Durant at some point is going to enter into the conversation. I don't know when, but I think he will. I'm going to go with LeBron, and I know we just kind of gushed over him and whatever. And yes, this is I'll say it's a LeBron Stan podcast, where we love LeBron and that's just what it is. But, I just think that if this is going to be based off of a legacy lifetime achievement award. And if he gets the Lakers to the 1 seed again, he's not coasting. He's taking this very seriously. He's not taking time off. He's still averaging about 25, 7, and 8 in his 18th year. He just had a 46-point game against his team that he just, that he left a couple years ago. I think all of this is just going to come down to people are going to go, well, it's not Giannis. Luka's team may not be good enough. They may end up being like a 4 or 5 seed. Like, it's going to probably come down to KD, Embiid, and him at some point. And at that point, if the Lakers again are the best team in the league, it may be best play, because again, Anthony Davis has not played nearly as well as we thought he was going to. So it might be best player on best team by far. And he thought he was going to have this like incredible Robin in AD all year, and it hasn't happened necessarily yet. I just think it might be a lifetime achievement, like legacy award. I understand if we want to go like best right now, like stats and all that, it is Embiid. But I'm just going to predict on what I think the voters are going to do at the end of the year based on what I've seen. If that's the case and LeBron continues on this tear and this pace, I don't see how they don't give it to him, just based on the times he's been snubbed, and what he's been doing as a 17th year and 18th year is remarkable. But I cannot argue against Embiid. It's like 1A, 1B if you ask me, and he's been unreal. So
narrative in the MVP race, is extremely important, as we have seen, throughout the years. So I think a lot of people still remember what happened last year and this past summer, with LeBron getting his finals MVP again. So, yeah, I mean, you might be right. And it would be, he's playing as good as ever. And it's a lifetime achievement award almost, at this point, because the fact that he only has 4 in his 18 seasons is absolutely ridiculous. But, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's splitting hairs. And if either one of them won it, it'd probably be pretty deserving. So, and
really quick, shout out that player of the month or player of the week stat you gave me the other day about LeBron.
Yeah. So
it was player of the month, right?
Player of the month over 40 times. The next highest person to have the most player of the months was Kobe at 17. Now, Michael Jordan had 16, but in the 90s, it was a one-person award. It was not. They had an Eastern Conference and Western Conference. That didn't start till like 2001, I believe. So okay. Kobe was in the league a couple of years before that came through. So there is that. But 17, 42, I think, absolutely nuts. Like,
the next closest person is still 25 away.
Yeah, they could double it, and it'd still be like 6, 7, 8 short, somewhere around there. Like,
that's so absurd. Oh my gosh. Okay. No. Again, just helping bolster my lifetime achievement award here that I think could happen. But no, that's insanity to me. So Embiid for you, LeBron for me for a quarter of the way MVP. All right. Yeah. Most improved player. What do we got?
Well, I think there's 2. I'll go ahead and talk about the one that we already talked about today, Jaylen Brown, taking that next step up. And this usually goes to someone who does that, right? Who either goes from like maybe a bench player to starter, or, that's a really good starter to borderline all-star. Very rarely do you see it go from all-star to, like MVP level season. And I'm not saying Jaylen Brown's right there yet, but he's balling out, man. So he's playing well. So I'm going to go with him. I mean, the progress he's made from, just the last 2 years, from averaging 13 points a game to 27, I think that in and of itself, is deserving.
Yeah. Nothing else to say. We talked about it. He's been unreal and definitely improved a ton. So can't argue with that. I'm going to go Christian Wood, kind of the same realm, right? Like a good player, not as good as Jaylen Brown and not even notable as Jaylen Brown, but man, has he taken a step and just been a baller.
Did you know he was this good, or is it just like was he this good and he's just having more opportunity in Houston now?
So I think it's the latter, what you said. I think like he's getting a ton more opportunity, but he did really well last year. And then I started to like look up videos and like numbers and advanced metrics. And I was like, oh, this guy has a chance to be really good in the right spot. Or just really anywhere if you give him more opportunity. And he's getting a ton of opportunity now in Houston because they kind of blew that thing up to an extent. And so, man, he has just been unbelievable. I got to pull up his stat line here, but just from what I'm watching, I mean, I'm trying to get a glimpse of him every night he plays, just because everything I see on Twitter is just how good he's been. I mean, he's averaging 34 minutes a night, 23.5 points on 53% shooting and 11 rebounds. I mean, he's a walking double-double. And I can't deny that from what he was as a career. I mean, he's a career he's a career 11 point per game guy with only 18 minutes. He's doubled his minutes, but he's also doubled his points and his production. And for that screams most improved player in my mind. So I love it.
Yeah. Hard to argue that. I mean, he is, like you said, he's a walking double-double. He's is he a 7-footer? Almost, at least. Right,
yeah, he's close.
6'10". Yeah. Center, who can shoot the three. He protects the rim, pretty well. I mean, he's almost averaging 2 blocks a game. So grabs rebounds and does whatever he is needed to do. So, and doubling his point average won't help or won't hurt either.
Right. So. And I think I'm going to pull up I think he's a decent 3-point shooter too, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah, he can shoot the three.
So yeah, I mean, he's the prototypical length of the NBA now where you can shoot. So big time. But yeah, so that's my most improved player. And you have Jaylen Brown. So quarter of the way through. All right, Joe. This is where you and I thrive. This is our role here on any basketball team.
6-man?
6-man of the year, baby. First guy off the bench. Big time impact off the bench here. Quarter of the way through, who would you have to say would be your 6-man of the year?
I think we're going to agree on this one because I don't know who else is going to be really, but Jordan Clarkson, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know much to say about that.
I've just the way this dude has played, like when he got that contract, we were like, what in the world? And then we're like, oh wait, Utah 1 really needed bench scoring, and 2, he is really providing that like in an insane clip. I was watching the other night, I think it was last night, they played the Knicks, and by the way, the Knicks went into the fourth quarter up 1 and they lost by 17. They scored I think they scored 13 points in the fourth quarter. That's it. But anyway, so all that to say, I was watching Jordan Clarkson play, and he's just like a spark plug. Like he comes into the game and he takes a couple weird shots, but then it's always like when he gets the ball, his role is when you get the ball, you go score. Like, and that's a freeing thought when you can just get the ball and know you're not going to be crucified by not scoring or by trying to score, even if you miss, because that's what they brought him in to do, is just be a spark plug and just score. And this year he's averaging, what's he averaging? 17 and 5. I mean, what's what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's in a perfect role right now. And I think Quinn Snyder just comes out and just says, hey, look, like, your role is to come onto the bench, provide us a spark plug, get us some scoring, know your role defensively, at least don't screw up too bad, which, in Utah, all you have to do is shade everybody to Rudy Gobert and you're fine. So, I mean, perfect role for him, and he's thriving in it. So, almost shooting 40% from the 3 right now.
Yeah, he's been awesome. And so if there's anybody that I can sit down and look at and have watched a decent amount and that comes off the bench, I believe he right now is the leader in the clubhouse for that 6-man of the year.
Defensive player of the year. I've got 2, and I think they're both on the same team. And I think Doc Rivers actually probably has a lot to do with this. But
for sure,
Joel Embiid, but really, and he's not going to get it. I know he's not, but in my head, he's probably it, and that is Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I can't argue like both those guys. Like, I mean, and Ben Simmons is unfortunate that he's not ever going to really get it because boy, does he affect the game in so many different ways defensively.
Yeah. Being
a point guard, but then having the length, being like 6'9", 6'10", his active hands, he gets steals, he blocks the ball really well too at the rim. But it just sucks that like, because 1, he's a point guard and those rarely win defensive player of the year, but 2, the guy on his team is also really, really good at playing defense too.
Yeah, and the thing about Ben Simmons is he's really out of bad position. Like, he's an extremely good help defender as well too, and he can legitimately. He doesn't need to do this because they have a lot of size, but he could legitimately guard all 5 positions. And I can think of 3 other players who can do that: Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Giannis. Right? Is there anybody else who could legitimately guard 5 positions at an elite level?
You said who?
Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Giannis.
I would throw KD in there.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I did forget about KD. Absolutely.
At peak defensive level, I think he can guard all 5. But, I mean, your 3 were not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have he's one of 5 guys who can do that. And he's called upon to do that. So, yeah, I think it's Ben. I mean, he's not going to win it. But I would.
Yeah. Like I said, I can't argue with that. I've loved what he's done. I'm going to throw one out there. I don't know if a lot of people have watched a lot of these games or if you've watched this guy at all. I'm going to go with Miles Turner. I've just been watching his presence and just the way that he's been playing down low, and I'm super impressed defensively what he's doing. So per 100 possessions, he's averaging 6 blocks a game. His defensive rating is a 102. His block percentage is an 11% block percentage, which is just, I mean, block percentage for if you don't know what block percentage is, it's an estimate of the percentage of the opponent 2-point field goal attempts blocked by the player when they're on the floor. In other words, 11% of the 2-point field goal, or the 11% of those 2-point field goals that come his way when he's on the floor, 11% of them are getting blocked a game.
That's crazy, man.
2 years ago, he was doing it at an 8.5% clip, which is also pretty good. So that coupled with just like, I didn't do a whole lot of the like deeper dive, like his rim percentage, like rim block percentage and all that stuff, but I'm assuming it's really high too. Like the shooting percentage at the rim for these players, I'm sure is really low. But just the defensive rating, the block percentage, and the defensive win shares and his defensive plus minus, all those numbers together, I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's him, Embiid, Gobert, a couple other big guys like Giannis and the ADs. But like when you're mentioned with those guys, like you're always going to be in that conversation for defensive player of the year because those are always the guys up there. And he to me has stood out in a year where Anthony Davis hasn't necessarily done a whole lot there. Rudy Gobert has struggled at times, although he's always going to be up there. He's struggled.
Yeah.
Embiid is up there too. But like, he just kind of has stood out with some of these numbers and these metrics. And I think that if you ask me like a quarter of the way through, I think it's him for defensive player of the year.
Interesting. I'm going to have to watch him a little bit more. So
yeah, just like you'll notice there's like, 5 or 6 plays a game down by the rim where you're just like, holy shit, he just swallowed that thing up. And so a lot of like what Anthony Davis was doing in the bubble and what like, Dwight Howard used to do at times, and certain people, like if you just came in there, he just swallowed you up. And he's he's a big guy, but he's a smaller, big dude. So it's even more impressive that he's kind of using a lot of like length and agility as well as, being in the right place to get those stops.
Makes sense, man.
Let's round it out here. One more award, and then we'll talk about our updated picks if we have any. So Coach of the Year, a quarter of the way through. I have one that I'm super pumped about, but you have one that you're really pumped about.
Yeah, dude. Okay. I think it was 2 weeks ago we got on here. We said the Suns, they're in like the 4th spot of the West. We said that they would come down, eventually, that they're going to make the playoffs, but they'll probably be around the 7th or 8th seed. Is that really going to be the case right now? I mean, the way that they are playing, and like they're in every single game. I know they lost a couple close ones to the Nuggets here recently, 2 in a row that went into overtime. I think it's Monty Williams, and I know the Chris Paul effect coming in, has helped them tremendously. But let's not forget, I mean, they did go 8-0 in the bubble, so they were already on their way, to this. But talk about someone who has brought a really, really young team a long way in a short amount of time. That was 2 years ago, tanking. Last year in the summer, they had a chance to make the playoffs. This year, they're going to be probably around the 5th spot. I really honestly believe that could be the case. So, yeah, I think it's Monty.
Yeah. So I will say, right now they're 8-7. They've dropped down to the 7 seed. Again, 2 close losses, to Denver.
Could have gone either way.
Devin Booker is now out tonight with a hamstring. I think Dario Saric is out due to health and safety. So here's the thing. They're young, so they're going to go through some rough patches. The great thing is when you have a coach of the year candidate like Monty Williams, he can help get, and Chris Paul as a veteran, he can get you through these rough patches being young. He did it with OKC. He did it when the Clippers were somewhat young as well. And I mean, he didn't do it necessarily as great in Charlotte, but he was also young. Now that he is older, and he did it with Houston, they weren't young, but he did it with Houston. He's a walking playoff berth. So if nothing else, if Phoenix is a top 6 seed, even let's call it top 5, because I think they can be in there. If they're a top 5 seed, Monty Williams deserves a ton of votes for that coach of the year if they make the playoffs as a top 5 seed, regardless. I don't care what else. You can give me the Chris Paul thing, whatever. He deserves all the credit in the world because, like you said, this team was bad and tanking and on its way to being a laughing stock.
They were bad. They were a laughing stock for a really long time. I mean,
yes.
But also, real quick shout out while we're talking about the Suns. Bridges, that dude's a baller, man.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, like he is like a modern day perfect 3-and-D player.
I love him. Yeah,
it's fun to watch. That whole team is just really, really fun to watch. Would love to see Ayton take another step defensively. He blocks a lot of shots, but he's out of position a lot. His contest is slow, but he does. He's taking steps. So, but love my Suns, man.
And Monty Williams he'll work on that. I mean, he's got time.
Yeah.
He's
he has. I mean, Ayton has improved defensively, quite a bit.
No doubt.
But he still has a long ways to go.
For sure. I can't argue with that. I'm gonna go Eastern Conference since you and I both talked. That was the guy I was gonna go with, Western Conference, but I'll go Eastern. I'm gonna eat my words here, and I'm gonna go Doc Rivers for the Celtics. Or sorry, not the Celtics, for the Sixers. I have my gripes, I have my views, and I have just things that I feel about him, but I cannot deny that this team has underachieved a lot in the past, and right now they are not underachieving. They're the number 1 seed in the East, 12-6, I think is what I saw, right? 12-6. And so he deserves all the credit in the world, and Embiid is taking a step. Ben Simmons is playing well with him now, and a lot of the defensive metrics and all that are because Doc Rivers loves defense and he puts in those defensive schemes, and they're really, really, and they work really well. So I'm going to give him the credit that he deserves this year, and he is my coach of the year the quarter of the way through on the Eastern Conference side.
Yeah, I mean, he's done great, and you see the difference between him and Brett Brown, obviously. Their point differential, which is actually a really good indicator of playoff success, by the way, is, I want to say second in the league right now. Second in the conference. So, actually third now. So, but anyways, for a while they were up there. And, I mean, they're just buying in defensively, and they got a lot of good pieces. You've always wanted to see this team, like, reach their talent, right? The last 3 years. You've been wondering. It makes you wonder, though, like, if Doc Rivers was there 3 years ago and they had Jimmy Butler, what that team could have done.
Yeah, there's always the what ifs, and I think the Jimmy Butler thing was a bummer for them to lose him anyway. But yeah, that with Doc Rivers, oh boy, like my goodness. So I completely agree. All right, let's round it out here. Let's finish this off. Joe, what, if any, do you have any updated Eastern Conference or Western Conference picks a quarter of the way through?
No, I mean, I'm sticking with the Lakers, and I still think it's going to be the Bucks. I really do. If the Bucks don't do it this year, Budenholzer has to go, right?
Yeah, I've been on the get rid of Budenholzer train already, but yeah, I think like
me too. But
I know we have.
It's hard to do that with a guy who wins 60 games. But
we have evidence. We have a precedent with that, though. We have a precedent. Dwayne Casey. We have precedent. So don't be afraid. If you think your team can take a step, don't let, like, I don't know. I'm over like letting, not mediocrity, because it's more than that, but in playoff, it's mediocrity, right? Like the Raptors were terrible in the playoffs, and the Bucks sometimes just underachieve in the playoffs. And not terrible, I shouldn't say it. They weren't terrible, but they underachieve. And so if that's the case, then like don't settle for mediocrity, or don't settle for what you think you have potential for just because he does really well in the regular season. I don't agree with that. So
too bad they didn't do it this offseason. They could have gotten Billy Donovan.
Well, guess who has them now? That's all I'm gonna say. They're not very good this year, but they'll
Are
be
you
fine.
seeing strides though? Are you seeing strides?
I don't know. I don't really know. But so your Eastern Conference is still Milwaukee, and your Western Conference is still the Lakers, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. I think I had the Sixers. No, I had the Bucks and the Lakers as well. I don't know if I change. I do really like the Sixers, but I got to see a round or a couple in the playoffs before I ever make the jump to go back to the Sixers. But you know how I feel. I said in the beginning of the year, I think that there's a difference here. They've got a different roster construction that I kind of like. But Tobias Harris has taken a step, which I like. I said that needed to happen, and I thought it could with Doc, because that was the last coach that made him a great player. So I'm down with that, but I'm still going to roll with the Bucks and the Lakers, as I'll stay there too.
There's a lot of teams out in the East that I feel like could come out of there. I think you have Brooklyn. Yeah, Philadelphia.
Nah, man, defense is going to kill them. I'm sorry. I was on the train of, like, when I first started watching, even without Harden, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can see this being a defense is atrocious. They gave up 147 points to the Cavs. And if you do that, I'm out.
They don't give a shit about defense. They
don't. Like, I don't even know if it's that they don't give a shit. Maybe they do. It just doesn't matter if they do. They're so bad. So bad.
Yeah. They got one plus. I'd say one plus defender, right? Just Durant.
Yeah, but like even then, he's not going to be as agile and as quick and as good as he used to be. So like he is a plus defender, but he's like kind of like a plus minus at times, because he's not always going to get there at the right time, just laterally. So, but yes, I mean, they'll score their way to the second or third round, maybe, or second round. But like after that, you better start playing defense, and they don't have it.
They don't, but I mean, okay, so maybe you're right.
We talked about it last week. There's only one team that's ever done it and not had a top 10 defense, and it was the 2001 Lakers, and they literally had one of the best offenses of all time. So and I'm not saying that it can't be done. The precedent has only been done once. History tells us if you don't have a top 10 defense, you can't do it. And I don't believe they're going to have a top 10 defense now that Kyrie's back. They weren't going to have it anyway. Now they're definitely not going to have it. Evidence of letting 147 points get scored on you by the worst offense in the league, by the way.
I mean, you're not wrong. And then, like, I guess the East really does come down to Philadelphia and Milwaukee then, because I don't trust Boston to get to the finals.
You may not trust them, but they're always there. So
they're always there, but I don't think they haven't made the finals yet.
No, I'm not saying that they're going to. I'm just saying, like, they're always there. And I do think
they're the Bucks or the Sixers, though. I mean, they haven't made the finals either. So.
The same. Yeah. Well, I think it'll kind of still be chalky, just because, again, it's the first quarter of the season. Like, we've got plenty of time to go. But, I mean, we have a team at the top now of the East that is a different one than before. So I think that it's not as chalky necessarily, but it may end up being chalk towards the end when everything's all said and done. That being said, we went chalk, and we were not bold and did not make any changes to our picks, because I've seen nothing that makes me think necessarily any differently.
No.
I mean, the Lakers were never going to change. They're by far the best team in the West and in the league, but Lakers in 5. Is that what we're going with?
In the finals? Yeah.
Yeah. Lakers in 5.
Gentleman's sweep, because
gentleman's sweep.
You're right. They're not even firing on all cylinders right now, and they're just head and shoulders above everybody else.
It's scary.
Yeah.
We say it. 80 at the 5 solves everything.
80 at the 5.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to another episode of In the Paint, and we'll catch you next week.
See you guys.